My Sweet Audrina, Part 2, Billie. Arden slammed the door behind us, loud, very loud, a warning to signal her. A few dead leaves had blown in with us. Quickly I bent to pick them up. When I had them in my hand, I straightened to quickly glance around with a great deal of curiosity. The living room was very pretty, with bright, chintzy fabrics covering the sofa and two comfortable-looking chairs. Compared to our huge rooms, it did look very small. The ceilings were hardly 8 feet above the floor, giving me a claustrophobic feeling. Still, the room had a cozy charm our kind of rooms would never have, no matter how much money was spent to rejuvenate its lost splendor, or how many sofas and chairs were covered by chintz. There was no shadows here, only clear winter sunlight that poured in brilliantly. There was no stained-glass windows to dazzle my eyes and enchant me with unwanted spells. "Mom," Arden called, "I've got Audrina with me. Come on out. You can't keep your secret forever." I spun around to stare at him, the dead leaves forgotten in my hand. Secrets, secrets, everyone seemed to have secrets. I saw his anxiety, the nervous hands that he stuffed in his pockets as he looked back at me in apprehension. From the look in his eyes, I knew that soon I would have to pass a test. God, I prayed let me do this right, whatever it was. I'll be right out," said Billie from another room. She sounded as anxious as her son looked. Her usually warm voice had lost its welcoming tone. Now I felt uncomfortable and ready to turn and leave. Still I hesitated, seeing Arden narrow his eyes as he watched me closely. No, I wasn't going to run this time. I was going to stay and find out at least one secret. Nervously, Arden glanced toward what I presumed was Billie's bedroom door. He didn't ask me to sit down. Perhaps he even forgot I wore a heavy winter coat with a hood, for he didn't ask me to take off my coat. He was much too distracted by that closed door he kept watching. I shook off the hood that kept the coat on as I waited and waited and waited some more. Arden hadn't removed his coat either, as if he expected we wouldn't stay long. Then as he bowed his head and stared at his shoes, I noticed for the first time a wooden wall shelf that held dozens of gold medals with dates and names. Irresistibly drawn, I stepped closer. Oh, good golly day. Delighted, I whirled around to flash a happy smile at Arden. Arden? Billie used to be an ice skating champion. How wonderful. Look at these Olympic awards. How could you keep something so fantastic a secret for so long? Just wait until Papa hears about this. Now what had I said wrong? He seemed even more embarrassed. Why, this was almost as good as Billie being Elizabeth Taylor. I couldn't envision Billie gracefully skimming over the ice, wearing some skimpy little costume that glittered. She'd whirl and spin and do those things called double axels and never become dizzy. And all the time I'd known her in Arden, she'd never boasted, never even hinted. She talked to me as if she was nobody special, and she was. A small voice distracted me, and I whirled around to see Billie, who must have waited until my back was turned to come out. Then swiftly hurried to sit in a chair. I stared. Why was she wearing such a full, long skirt in the middle of the afternoon? The gown she wore looked very expensive, as if she were going to attend some gala, formal affair. Her marvelous jet-black hair was piled high on her head in a mass of ringlets instead of just hanging loose down her back, and that alone made her look different. Her face was heavily painted, even garlishly so. Her lashes were longer and thicker than I'd noticed before, and she must have put on every last piece of jewelry she owned. I smiled weakly, not knowing how to handle a situation like this. Without all that stage makeup, she was stunningly beautiful. The fancy taffeta dress and heavy costume jewelry made her look cheap, a fraud, someone I didn't even know, and worse, someone I didn't think I'd want to know. "Mom," said Arden, "you didn't need to go to so much trouble." "No, Billie, you didn't. I liked you the way you looked much better before." "Yes, I did. And Arden, you should have warned me. You know that." I looked from one to the other, guessing something was dreadfully wrong. The vibrations between mother and son were so strong I quivered, sensing their anxieties, because I was inside their house where she didn't want me. Yet Arden was gazing at me with so much appeal, his eyes were pleading with me for me to notice nothing amiss. So I smiled and stepped over to shake her hand. I sat down and began a silly conversation. When she'd been at the window, and I'd been on the ground outside, she'd been easy to talk to. Now we were like strangers, meeting for the first time. Soon I made some flimsy excuse about having to hurry home to help Aunt Elizabeth. "Won't you stay for dinner?" asked Arden. I flashed him a hurt look of reproach. At least Papa was direct with his hostility and didn't hide it behind the guise of friendship as Billie was doing. Gee, I thought childishly, feeling hot tears stinging the back of my eyes. Our friendship was only for the outside, not indoors. It was just as Vera told me. I wasn't respectable enough for Billie. Was I so crazy that people didn't want me in their houses? Again my eyes clashed with Arden's, mine accusing, his still pleading for understanding. Please, please, his eyes were begging. I decided to stay so long enough to find out what was making all of us so self-conscious. There was something burning in the oven. Maybe I was interrupting her cooking and she didn't like it. There was enough for three. It wasn't enough for three, and she didn't really want me to stay for dinner. It was such a little house that the kitchen seemed part of the living room. Billie, I think I smell something burning in the oven. May I take it out for you? She blanched, shook her head, gave Arden a putative signal before she weakly smiled at me. No, thank you, Audrina. Arden to do all of that. But please, do stay and have potluck with us. But the expression of anxiety she couldn't control gave lie to her words. Really distressed and embarrassed now, I bowed my head. Thank you for asking me. But as you know, my father doesn't like for me to come through the woods and over here. Arden glanced at me and then his mother, then soberly said, Mom, this is getting to be a bit much. Can't you just tell Audrina? She flushed and paled. I didn't want to know now. All I wanted to do was escape. I stood to go. Suddenly Billie gushed, oh, why not? Flinging wide her slim, strongly muscled arms, she went on, Audrina, my dear girl, you're now gazing upon what was once the world's. What's up? I was reading a book out loud. That coffee you got there?
Making coffee. This is what was in the bottom of the thing.
So you'll make me one?
Sure.
As if I need coffee? Yes. So we have to leave home about 5 o'clock in the morning to get where we're going in time.
Where am I going?
Well, he will drive and you will sit in the car with me until it's time to come home, and then you will drive. Though you don't want those.
Are those supposed to be cookies?
Yes, but he had them in his room for like ever, and I tasted one of them. They taste like shit, so I'm gonna give them to the dogs.
Bring coffee when I'm in.
Okay. Audrina, dear girl, you are now gazing upon what was once the world's Olympic ice skating champion until I turned professional. That lasted about 18 years. I had a glorious time, loving every moment of the excitement. Arden can tell you tales of how we lived out of trunks. We traveled all over the world entertaining people, and then one fateful day I fell on the ice because someone had lost a bobby pin. I could have broken my leg, but I only received a cut from my skate. That small cut should have healed in a week or so, but it didn't heal in 6 months. Because the doctors found out I have diabetes. Would you believe my leg was rotting right before our eyes, and there didn't seem to be anything the doctors could do to stop it? I hadn't been to a doctor all during my career. I suppose if I had known what kind of vicious disease I had, I might have given up skating much sooner. But as it was, I had my day, didn't I, son? Yes, Mom, you had your day in the sun, and I'm happy you did. His eyes lit up with pride as he smiled. I can close my eyes right now and see you skating, the star of the show. And I felt so proud, so very proud. Audrina, what my mother is trying to say and having so much difficulty with is, I don't have any legs, that's what, shrieked Billie. I stared at her disbelievingly. Yes, she cried, I was hoping you'd never find out. I wanted us to be friends. I wanted you to treat me like a normal human being and not like a freak. So stunned by her information, I felt sick. I stared at her face, trying not to look where her legs should be under all those wrestling skirts. No legs? How did she get around? I wanted to get out, to run, to cry. For here was another beautiful, kind, and wonderful woman whom God had punished, and somebody else Papa wouldn't approve of. A dreadful silence filled the small room and spread throughout the whole cottage almost as if time were standing still. We all hung on the brink of some chasm that would have swallowed Billie and forever separate Arden and me. Whatever I did or said, whatever expression was on my face at this very moment, would tell them more than my words. I didn't know what to do or what to say or even what to think. I floundered helplessly, trying to grasp something that would give me the right words. And then I thought of my mother. Just suppose, that Mama had come home from the hospital with no legs. Would I have felt disgust and revulsion? Would I have been ashamed and embarrassed to have seen her? No. I'd have wanted her back, no matter what. I'd do anything to have Mama back, with or without legs. That's when I found my voice. You're the most beautiful woman with dark hair I've ever seen, I said sincerely. I'd say you were the most beautiful one I've ever seen, but my mother was beautiful too. If only I could have my mother again, I wouldn't care if she had legs or not. Paused, flushed, and felt guilty, for Mama would have cared. She wouldn't have been able to cope with her loss. She'd cry, hide herself away, and probably die from the lack of wanting to live without her legs. Admiration washed over me for Billie, who would live for Arden's sake, for her own too, no matter what the circumstances. I think, too, that you're the kindest and most generous woman I've ever known. I piled my problems on your shoulders, and not once have you even handed you had your own. Humbled and ashamed, again I had my head inclined. I had felt sorry for myself just because my memory was perforated with holes, through which the secrets of my existence had been dropped. Now that she told me a little, Billie was going to tell me everything. My husband left me shortly after I came home from the second amputation 2 years ago. There was no bitterness in her voice. My son waits on me, at least. He helps me with what I can't do for myself. Although I'm pretty good about doing for myself. Hey, Arden? Yes, Mom, you're super. There's very little you can't do for yourself. He smiled at me, so proud of his mother. Of course, my ex-husband does send his piddling little check once a month, said Billie. What's burning? I smell something burning. Something's burning.